Hi, everyone. Welcome to Get Scrappy. We're here. It's a new video format on Build It, Ship It. The idea here is we really want to talk about tips and tricks, tactical things that we can do as product managers to win and to make our customers happy. And really excited to have Kirsten Van Detta on for the very first episode of this. Kirsten, thanks for being here.
Yeah, happy to be here.
And
Thanks
I
for having
totally
me.
put you on the spot. We were chatting about it, and I was like, let's just record it because this conversation is so interesting.
Why
So
not?
I appreciate that too, and apologize, I guess. Uh, would you mind just giving everyone a quick introduction of who you are?
Yeah, sure. So, Kirsten Van Detta, I've been in product about 9 years and mostly in B2B and B2C space, so tongue twisters,
Yeah.
and both internal and external products. So, kind of run the gamut, but a lot of love for CRM systems. Those are my favorite.
Ah, nice. Yes, and I'm in the CRM space too, so we have that in common. Um, yeah, we actually ran into each other on LinkedIn, kind of in the comment section of a post around user groups, and I'm always excited when I see other people talking about these types of things because personally, it's been sort of my cheat code in my career is, as soon as I start somewhere, creating this idea of a user group and utilizing it to its full extent. But I'd love to hear kind of what your definition of a user group is and why it's been beneficial to you.
Yeah, so for us, sometimes people think of focus groups when they think of user groups. Definitely not a focus group. It's more of
Yeah,
a long-term group of folks who are willing to be available to talk about what they love about your product, don't like about your product, the problems that they have, and really build a bridge between you and your customers that's very candid, open, transparent. You get them to a point where they feel okay speaking up, and you get so much information from that's useful for your product. But I really look at that as like a group that moves for at least a longer term. It's not a short term thing, and you really build that trust with your customers and start to leverage that to make better solutions.
yeah, I find that to be tricky, especially at first, is getting folks to open up. Anything you've done in particular, or does it just take time?
I used to have this, so we had a user group at a previous company, and I used to start our terms. So everybody would come in for a 1 or a 2 year term. And when I would start it, I would just make sure that they know the product is not my baby, it's their solution.
Yeah,
You cannot offend me. You're not calling my baby ugly. I can't help you more if you don't tell me,
yeah,
what is or is not working. And would really sort of avoid like product jargon, like sprints and MVPs, and leave all that on the table and really speak their language. So you're meeting them where they're at. And I think that really helped open up the group to like, okay, Kirsten is not going to cry tonight if I tell her that this super sucks and I don't like it.
yeah. In fact, maybe the opposite. Maybe you'd be happy to have that feedback, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Just to go back for a second, and I'll be honest. I mean, this is sort of self-serving because I have fought this battle at every company I've been at. You mentioned the user group is not a focus group. Could you say a little bit more about that? For me, it's always been almost to defend it against maybe the marketing or sales team who might look at it as something different. Yeah, but I'm interested in your take and how they differentiate.
That's a good point. For me, the focus group is you're really going after one area that you're researching. So for me, as a CRM platform product manager, I was across the gamut. I was running across 27 different personas. I had all sorts of different things in the system. And so looking at the user group, it was really more holistic. I had different roles and representing different segmentations in that user group. For a focus group, though, I might take a subset of that user group and put them in a specific group for a specific project or feature that we're rolling out that we really want to focus in on, hone in
I see.
on,
I see.
and get their direct feedback on that.
Ah, okay. So it's more around their kind of the breadth of what they're
Yeah.
looking at or giving you feedback on. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, for me, there's been a lot of hey, wait a minute, we already have a customer advocacy board, and you know, what's your thing, and what are you trying to do here? What's your motive or motivation? And I've always had to call out, I'm not creating a customer advocacy board. I think that's more for our buyers. I'm really looking at users. No fancy dinners with my group, or, people in nice dresses and sport coats. This is all kind of in the product level versus that buyer level. So that's interesting though, how you mentioned, well, focus group is focused, right? It's going after a specific goal that you have in mind. I'm curious too, how in the past have you started these user groups? Have you ever had to start them from scratch, or did you inherit them?
So I think in most cases I've inherited something that has already started. I'm trying to think if I've actually started anything from scratch, but we have done full reboots. So maybe a subset existed and then we sort of dissolved that, how that was happening. We sort of reboot, but the company did itself already have a culture of seeing user groups as efficient and effective. And so didn't have to convince leadership that those were important, though when we rebooted, we did have to convince them of the increased cost of how we wanted to run it. Luckily got the funding for that. But yeah, generally inherited. It was more around refining and making them useful and not just like a badge somebody could wear and say, oh yeah, I'm in the user group, but we weren't leveraging them the best way possible. So
Neat. How about activities? So what are some of the things you might engage with your user group on?
activities, just in general, like the ebb and flow of how we engaged.
Yeah, I mean, was it always just kind of roundtable meetings, or were there other, maybe you bring in the marketing team or a design team, or was it strictly for product management?
Kind of depends on which company or experience you're talking about, or at least that I'm talking about. But in general, we would have a cadence, a regular cadence. So no matter what, we were meeting regularly. In some cases, when we were doing a new product build, we were meeting weekly, which was great that we had that much dedication. In other cases, it was more in um, uh, a regular cadence of like a monthly or a quarterly meeting where everybody would come together. At one company, we actually did in-person on-sites twice a year. So we got everybody in a room where we could whiteboard and think through things together and spend time together outside of just looking at the product, which was
Yeah.
really great because then you really got to know your customer. Sometimes you would just hear something like they're talking about a problem that has nothing to do with your product, and you're thinking, oh, but that could have something to do. Let me bring that in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was formal in the sense that we had regular cadences. And like I mentioned, for the focus groups, if I had something I really needed a subset from my user group for, I would create that separately. It would have a separate cadence to it. And we would generally have to create, what are we trading for your time here? If you come in and beta this product for me, am I giving it to you for free for the first year, like that kind of thing. So it was pretty formalized the way we approached it in all the companies that I've done that with.
Okay. So in the same vein that it's scrappy and you're kind of starting this up, there's still some formalization around the parameters, right? Like were you selective around who's part of the user group, or was it, we'll take anybody?
I think at first it was, when you're just trying to build it all together and have people buy into it, you really are taking anyone who wants to be a part of it. I think as people saw that the people in the user group really had a voice, they really had a strong voice in how our product rolled out, how we envisioned our roadmaps and our strategies going to market. And so as it sort of gains traction, then you have to start getting really picky. If I had a choice, though, even up front, I really would look at what strategies I was going to employ for that quarter or that year on my roadmap and select segments that I think could really drive the conversation and help us learn for what parts of that strategy we were executing on. I think it does make a difference if you segment, because also if you have too broad of a segment and different segments and everybody's in there, they're having a hard time relating.
Yeah.
If you have like huge enterprise customers and a small one-man shop, they're like, you put me in a group with these people and I have nothing in common whatsoever. So you do have to consider that too.
Yeah, because part of the value is they can share ideas, right? So if they're too
Absolutely.
different to share those ideas, it's a really good point. We've tried to brand it that way, that you're not, you'll learn a little bit from us around how customers might use the product or what's on our roadmap. But really it's those kind of in the moment learnings and sharing of how other customers are using the product that um, I feel have, provide a lot of value for the group.
So
Um,
much, yeah. Even for us, right, as product people, hearing how they're using it, maybe it wasn't how we intended. We're like,
yeah,
oh, you're solving a problem that I wasn't aware of in a different way. That's very cool.
yeah, it's great. So how do you recruit for it? Like when you're, in the earlier days, you mentioned we'll take anybody, but how do you get that message out? How do you attract people to the user group?
I think it depends on the context, the type of company that you're at. In one company, it really was a leader to leader situation where my product leadership would go and speak to other leaders of like the customer advocacy group and ask for them to dedicate time and send folks our way. But in another way, we would at another company, it was a huge marketing effort. Our marketing team would talk about what you get from it. They would talk about how exclusive it started to become. If you didn't apply by this time, you might not get in for two
Homo.
years. Like so, and so I think there's different ways to do it. It just really depends on your context and the type of product that you're running, I think.
Yeah, I love that. I like especially getting other teams involved and their buy-in. As I mentioned, it's always that I've always hit that first speed bump of like, wait, what are you trying to organize here? And then once we sort of differentiate it, and what I always tell people is, look, all I'm doing is creating a list of emails. Essentially, that's what it is to operationalize this. And then we can use that however we want. So if we're doing a usability study from design, if we're doing maybe new messaging we want to try out and get feedback on from marketing, we can bring in different teams and they can take advantage of it. It's not just for the product group. Have you found that too, incorporating other teams to get value out of it, or has it been solely product management focused?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We did try to keep sales out because I do think, again, you have to create a position of
Yeah.
trust. And if you have a sales team in there, I
Yes.
don't think they, they mean well, but they're not going to want to speak up because they know sales is coming at them with the next upsell, cross sell. But so I did actually keep sales out of there, but we had change management and product education types of folks like go-to-market enablement. And I think those teams need to understand what the value they're communicating. They certainly get that from the product team, but hearing it firsthand sometimes in a user group session, talking about like how the last thing is going to solve their problem or why they're excited about this other thing can kind of help them with product positioning
Yeah.
and those marketing messages. We also would have our education team, so training and education,
That's a great
come
idea.
in and sort
Yeah.
of listen to examples. It's way better if you're writing, a document or video of how to use something. You have a real life example, tangible, that
Sure.
somebody can connect to. And then I did have to convince my VP of product to let me do this, but I also would bring in my engineering team. I think when
Oh,
as product people, you go back and you say, here's what I'm hearing. It's a lot different if the engineers are sitting in the room going, oh, I heard that too, but here's how I heard it differently.
yep.
I really liked bringing in engineering.
Yeah, that's probably one of the more important groups, and I totally left them out. So thank you for adding that.
Yeah.
It's great for them to hear maybe some of the pain that they're going through, or maybe, like you said, some of the different use cases. And yes, if you're in sales and watching this video, we love you. We love sales, but I agree with you. Couldn't do this without you in product. But I'm with you. In fact, in my case, it was I think someone on the marketing team said, "Oh, you're experiencing pain. We have a services package we can sell." And I'm like, "Oh, no, you're setting us back here in terms of trust." So you reminded me of that episode when you said that. Um, awesome. So any other tips, tricks, things that you've kind of learned with user group that you could share with the audience here?
Yeah, I think I really have two things. So on that element of building trust, I think Obviously building empathy in goes in there too.
Yep.
And I think one of the things I learned early on, and again, this was from a product mentor, my first one, he basically said, you should not be talking as much as the users are. If you are up there talking about the roadmap and just vomiting all over them of all the cool things that are coming, like you're not getting the value out of this user group that you should be.
Yeah.
You should be
Yeah.
talking 10% of the time. They should be talking 90. And so I really had to help the other team members in my group from the product team and engineering be comfortable in sitting in silence. Like you have to be able to sit there for 60 seconds until people finally speak up sometimes, and not fill that with, well, it sounds like you have this problem. We can sell you this package, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
really get uncomfortable with, comfortable with uncomfortable silence.
Yep.
And I think the other thing that I learned, maybe a year in was have a purpose for it. Don't just go through the motions because there is a user group. Like, understand what value you can leverage from that. Yes, you can get feedback, but what types are you looking for? What do you need? You really have to look out at your strategy and say, what is my best use for this group in this quarter? What do I hope to achieve? So I think setting some objectives for yourself too is really important.
Oh, that's a great tip. Yeah, I love that. Really important, and they'll appreciate that too. And I totally agree with the silences. You might even be able to detect that on this call here. I talk a lot, and it's been hard to say, all right, I'm going to sit back and kind of let the conversation run its course, or however it might go, and just be in listen mode. So well, these have been excellent and helpful hints. So thank you so much, Kirsten. Sorry I put you totally on the spot to
Don't
record
worry.
this on the fly, but I had a feeling you would you'd step up and knock out of the park, which you did. So thanks for being part of the first one of these. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, John.